name is John Rumery. I'm the Industry Council Lead for West Michigan Tech Talent. We are part of one of the 5 industry councils of West Michigan Works in the area. We work on a variety of initiatives in the K through 12 space, career experience in the schools. We help with state and federal funding for employers to upskill in training in the tech area. And we also work closely with the Right Place and Hello West Michigan in initiatives to attract and retain talent. We host a lot of events and do a lot of different things in the community. So with that said, our discussion this morning, we're very excited to be the ones to kick this off, is about talent, and that's all about talent. And just to give you a quick prompt, the Right Place Tech Strategy that I think most people in here are familiar with, the objective is to add 20,000 new tech jobs in the greater Grand Rapids area over the next decade to reach 10% of the regional workforce. So that is kind of the context. We're going to go through a series of discussions today and explore some different tactics, strategies, opportunities, and challenges, and then hopefully have a discussion afterwards. So just quick housekeeping, we'll go through our panel discussion and approximately like 10 o'clock, we're going to open it up for some Q&A. But to get things started, I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and we have a little bit of a question for them as they do that. So their name, their company, and then in their role, what are the big opportunities and challenges to grow, develop, and attract and retain an inclusive, world-class tech workforce and position the greater Grand Rapids area as a tech hub? So we'll start with Dept next. And your microphones are kind of next to you. You should be able to talk and everybody should hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, because I don't have a real loud voice. I always say that I raised 4 children and I used my loud voice a long time ago. I figured that thing out. So I'm going to give you, I brought some notes along and I'm going to give you some data. But first, I'm from the state of Michigan. I work for the LEO, Labor and Economic Opportunity, and with the Department of Employment and Training. I'm the Division Administrator of Industry Engagement. And within industry engagement, I have 3 missions. I work with industry, employers, in order to understand what their workforce needs are. To do that, we have 3 areas: apprenticeship, work-based training or work-based learning, and sector strategies, because all 3 of those will go into building a larger talent pipeline within West Michigan and across the state. So, your first question, tell me again, what's the opportunity?
Yeah, what are the opportunities and challenges to grow and develop West Michigan into a tech hub?
So, you all are really prime. I lived in West Michigan for 23 years, and now I'm living in mid-Michigan, but coming in the mid-1990s to Michigan, it has changed drastically. You all have done phenomenal in the areas of workforce and culture and bringing people together to solve problems. I recall a lot of talk went on when I first came into the workforce world. I was helping people with disabilities. I was working with employers, figuring out what they needed the worker to do, and then I would create job aids, I would create training to help that worker skill up and to be able to do the job. Fast forward 15 years and some phenomenal things have occurred. Collaboration is number 1. And I remember talking with the different, the Right Place and all of our community partners. And you all don't depend on anybody to get things done. You are self-sufficient. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you need to, but you are resilient. And I've seen that collaboration, that strength and collaboration build across West Michigan. And you work very closely with your educators, your economic developers, your nonprofit organizations that develop culture. So I would say that is your strength in developing a good tech hub, is you've got incredible opportunity and history of bringing workforce partners together to create talent.
All right, thanks, Deb. Next panelist, Art, same question.
Yeah.
Introduction and the question.
All right. Art Betancourt. I'm the CEO and founder of AEBetancourt. We're located here in downtown. Our primary focus is executive and professional search, as well as talent strategy consulting solutions. Basically, we help companies recruit and retain employees, great talent. Been in business for about 7 years. We have clients in all 50 states across a pretty broad range of industries and roles. We have a lot of core business here in West Michigan in the upper Midwest. As far as opportunities and challenges, first let's talk a little bit about the challenges, because that is really what shows us what the opportunity is. We're demographically, when we talk about diversity as part of your question, we're just demographically not a very diverse community. And we're not known as a tech hub yet. The opportunity, though, is one, West Michigan is a great place to live. You know, I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and lived in Texas for 13 years after that, and people look at me and like, why are you in West Michigan? Well, there's two answers to that. One is the most common. My spouse is from here, right? And so basically a boomerang. But second, we really wanted to live here because West Michigan is a great place to live. There's a lot of opportunity here, especially a lot of the recent economic data that's come out in terms of how West Michigan is expected to perform. Our economy is expected to perform through this potential recession. We have a very young population here demographically. We have a lot of unique things about that. What is our opportunity? It's really twofold. One, when we talk about diversity in business, we have an opportunity to invest and support diverse businesses here in West Michigan. Women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned businesses. And as we begin to support those as a community, then we will become known as a place, a destination that diverse talent is going to want to come to. Second, I believe we have a lot of resources from businesses and leaders that are dedicated to solving this problem of increasing our workforce within the technology sector. And you look at a lot of different initiatives that we've had as a community over the last 20 years, with this next one in our sights of being a tech hub and increasing our workforce in the tech space. We have the right minds on it, and as a community, if we're focused on it, we're going to be able to accomplish that. So there's a lot of opportunity there, primarily just because we want it as a community, and we have a history of going after things we want and seeing good results.
All right, thanks, Art. Stella?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Stella Michael, and I serve as the Director of Digital Services at Corewell Health. I also serve as the Chair for the Board of West Michigan Asian American Association, which what brought me here. So in my work at Corewell Health, we work on a CRM platform called Salesforce that is a cloud-based software. And one of the biggest challenges that I've faced over the last few years is basically that talent. It's a very niche expertise skill set, and there is not much of that pipeline here in the West Michigan area. I've had jobs that were posted for more than a year, but no one applying. So there's a big opportunity there in terms of trying to understand what are those up and coming technologies, whether it's cloud-based, AI, ML, now cybersecurity, and how do we try to invest both within our community but also attract talent outside of from our community and bring them here. As you all know, I'm an Asian, and I also know that Asian countries produce a lot of tech talent, and one of the most common stories that I hear is we have students coming into universities like GB and Calvin. They come here and they struggle to find a job because they require work sponsorship, and so we have kind of a leaky pipeline where people come here, fall in love with this place, but don't have sponsors or employers who can, bring them on. So there is another challenge there where, you know, we don't have that healthy student to business pipeline, especially focusing on those international students or even immigrant workers, and then having employers who either have that knowledge and are committed to making that happen. And I think the final one is retention. I mean, there are certain things like weather we can't control. People like want to complain about the cold, but I always tell them that the summers are the best here, and you know they should come check it out. But the things that we can control is having that sense of belongingness and having that community where they feel that there are resources, there are places of worship, there are places of community where they can go and be with their affinity groups. I think that's another big challenge where they're here, but somehow they just don't feel belong, they don't feel included, they struggle day in and day out to make their voices heard, and then they decide to say, yeah, I guess it's time to move on to another place, which is usually like a Austin or a Dallas or a Silicon Valley or things like that. So those are some of the things that I've noticed. We also know, because we are in the West Michigan market, and our cost of living is fairly less when compared to the national cost of living. I mean, the average. You have people that are competing with our talent that are offering way more than what we can offer, especially at Corewell being a nonprofit. Yes, we are the largest employer in Michigan now, but we really struggle with giving them that competitive pay, because they're competing, especially in the sales force, they're like hotcakes. And so we try to attract them, but again, to keep up with that competitive pay is again another challenge. So it requires a lot more systems thinking approach to how do we solve this problem from a corporate, university, community, nonprofit organizations. How can we come together to create that environment where we not just attract talent, but also retain them? So those are some of the things that I've noticed. Yeah.
Thank you, Stella. And we're going to explore through our questions that leaky pipeline. It's a really interesting problem, a wicked problem, I guess, to solve for us. Daniel?
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Quintanilla. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Gentex. You know Gentex, we're a technology company based here in West Michigan. We're a global company. And so our job is my job is to hire talent and bring them to West Michigan, right? Or to keep them in West Michigan, I think, as far as opportunities and challenges. I'm going to double down on a lot of what was said here, but as we're talking about not being known as a technology hub, there's so much technology in West Michigan, and we can compete with almost anybody in the country, but people just don't know it. So we're losing talent that are leaving West Michigan, thinking that there's nothing for them to do here. It's just not true. So challenges and opportunities for us is to let them know what is available here in West Michigan, right in their backyard they just don't know about. And yes, we're competing against huge names and the same kind of talent that we're fighting for. We have something special in West Michigan, and people just don't know that, right? But it's so important that we create inclusive environments for people who want to come and stay here. And technology changes all the time as well, right? You got to be on top of that. So as we change technologies, where we've had to go find people has changed. So we're very much, for a long time, a very regional hiring company, right? We're very Midwestern hiring. Can't do that anymore. We have to expand outside this area. We have to let people know in California, Texas, and globally what we do here. And that has been a challenge to say, seriously, in New Zealand, there's some cool technologies going on, right? We're talking about machine learning, we're talking about AI, we're talking about all different kind of engineering disciplines, and it's happening here. And then when they get here, it's like, wow, that's amazing. I want to be part of that. And then they leave our buildings into the environment. It's somewhere I know I can stay and live. That's where we have to get better as a group, as an environment, let people know that this is a place where you can stay and raise a family and have a very successful career in life. So those are opportunities that we have as a community to bring that talent here and to keep them here. As we hire people, three things, especially young up-and-coming engineers and scientists, what they're looking for us, we hear a lot, is sustainability, D&I, and community engagement. Like, that's what they want to know about. That's what's going to keep people here. Are we doing the things in our community to help people want to be here? Because when they leave our doors, they live somewhere, they go to school somewhere, they play somewhere. How are we taking care of them there as well? And in the past, we didn't have to worry about that. We have to now. We have to. People want to be here. You want that technology here. We have to think about those things. So that's the opportunities that we have, and challenges as well. It's not easy. It's hard work, but it's important. Help us as a community as a whole all work together to be able to do that.
All right, thank you. And we're going to explore everything that our panelists have talked about. We're going to explore it, kind of unpack it a little bit, and then during the Q&A too, you can also get some insights Well, we'll start with the first question of our panelists. I'm gonna start with Deb. So what does the data tell us from the state of Michigan in terms of tech talent? What's the state of tech talent
Okay,
in West Michigan?
so I brought my phone along because I'm gonna give you some
All right,
data, and I don't rely on my memory quite as much anymore. But let's first look at the state of Michigan, and then we can do some comparisons to West Michigan. So we have some work to do in the state of Michigan, and in West Michigan, but the state. 3.6%, that's what tech jobs represent in Michigan. Only 3.6% of the jobs. The good side is that the industry is highly educated, and even in entry-level positions, people are coming in with $22 an hour jobs, compared to $17 an hour for other jobs across the state. So that's the good news. Employment across the state of Michigan is expected to grow by 8.8% in information technology. Software developers, however, good one, and keep that in mind as we talk about West Michigan, 23% growth within the next 6 years. So that's very good. So now let's talk about one more thing I'll add to it. There's 4 areas in West Michigan that house the majority of your tech workers and employment. That's Metro Detroit, and I'm going to do it in order of the highest to the lowest. Metro Detroit comes in the highest, and that's double digits. Then we have Southeast Michigan, which is just the border of Metro Detroit. Then Mid-Michigan, that's the Lansing area. Of course, you've got a lot of insurance companies in there, a lot of tech jobs going on. State of Michigan, huge in there. And then we have West Michigan. So you made the list. That's the good news. And John, I'm glad to hear that you said the goal is to bring the overall tech jobs up to 10%. Right now, you're at 5%. So the good news is you're higher than the overall state of Michigan. Overall state of Michigan, remember, 3.6%. That's what tech jobs represent. West Michigan is it represents 5% of overall employment, 5% are in tech jobs. The goal, I'm hearing, is to get that up to 10%. So there's a lot of work that goes up into getting that up to 10%. The other challenges that West Michigan has is related to diversity, and I know we're going to cover that, and so I'm just going to lightly cover it here. But there's a ratio of Caucasian males is 2 to 1 to women in tech jobs. So if the employers are out saying, I'm having a hard time finding talent, it's not that the talent isn't out there. It's not that the talent isn't out there. And I got to repeat that again and again. It's that they're not going into the field of information technology. Women and minority populations are not going in. So underrepresented populations, people of color, they're going into tech jobs, but they're representing single digits in the tech job industry. So men, Caucasian men, represent the highest amount, 76% I think of tech jobs are filled by Caucasian men. Half, again, are women, and in single digits you get people of color. So right in the shadows of this building, there are people who could do these jobs, but they need a little support. There's lots of people out there, but they need a little support. And I say finding talent is multi-pronged. So I am looking at state of Michigan. I want to keep, and being a mother of 4, of course, adult children now. I've kept three of my 4 in West Michigan. But I want to keep the kids who are going to school now and some of you have kids, some of you have grandkids, but I want to keep them in Michigan. I don't want them going out, and sometimes that's what happens. They have to go find their future someplace else, but at least I want them coming back, all right? So we need to give opportunity to the students and to young adults that we have right here in Michigan. So, all right. So we need career pathways, is what I say. A lot of people aren't built, they at least perceptual, they perceive that they're not ready to go on to get a college education. That's okay. Let's start at the beginning then. In West Michigan, your top jobs here in information technology is computer user support specialist, all right? And that pays $23 an hour. And all you need is maybe a certificate. You need your high school diploma, and a certificate, some college, all right? And then we want to build that career pathway so you can go into network support specialist. Great, that's $28 per hour in West Michigan. And then, now remember what I said before, was software developers was going to grow what did I say, 23% by within the next 6 years? West Michigan, the primary occupation that you all have here and what you need is software developers. So there's lots of career pathways that the youth have to build and to gain a career here in West Michigan in technology. But we've got to put some supports around them. There's misperceptions about what technology jobs do, and I can't do it, or I don't understand it, and we've got to fill that need however way we can. And then, of course, let's take baby steps. Let's get them into a certificate. Let's start them in high school, maybe get them into a certificate, and then build them in, get the job, and then build their career pathway.
All right, thank you. We're going to explore a little bit some upskilling programs and maybe some partnerships that are being done around the state to fill that pipeline and those career pathways. But we're moving on to Art now. All right, Art, this is like my money question for you. All right.
Try not to disappoint.
So, when you're recruiting individuals and their families to come to West Michigan for a job or to work in this area,
Yeah.
you know, what's your pitch?
Well, it's part of your question is interesting because you said individuals and their families, and I think that when you're recruiting people to come to West Michigan, you're not just recruiting the individual, you're recruiting the spouse, you're recruiting the kids, and I think that's what's missed a lot because most of the time when we're working on a relocation search, everything's great, and then there becomes a moment where it's like, ooh, somebody else put the nail in this one. We're not going to be able to move. And so, first of all, there's no, you have to think of it from a sales perspective, and you have to identify the need. There's no one single pitch that's going to say like, this is the best thing to say. That's kind of like spamming people, right? So our pitch always starts with a question of a version of, a version of helping somebody find what a superior opportunity is for them. So essentially, if a role was a superior opportunity over what you're doing today, would you be interested in having a conversation? Well, when you start having that conversation with that individual, what's the first question? If you start with that question, then what would be the next question that you ask them when you get on the phone or in person? What is a superior opportunity for you, right? So it's not, hey, we have a superior opportunity for you. Here's this 20-page slide deck from the right place about how awesome this place is to be. It's, well, what's a superior opportunity for you? What's that career advancement that you're looking for? What are you not getting where you're at now? What are you looking for next? Oh, great. Here's the one slide from the 30-page slide deck that we want to talk about that's of why you should move here. And then the second is talking with them deeper if they have a family and saying, what factors is your wife or your husband going to consider? What stage of life are your children in, and what's going to be hard for them about moving here? And so you have to think of it pretty holistically, and compensation is another big piece that you have to think of as well. So I was looking at some of the data from the Right Place, and our median income, average household median income, is about 96% of the national average. Just did some quick math in my head, but the average income of a tech worker compared to the national average is 69%. So there's two things that are really interesting there. If you're looking to start a tech company here, if you can find them, we got cheap labor here, right? It's awesome. But that also puts you at risk for people leaving to work for a company in San Francisco at San Francisco wages, which, by the way, their cost of living is double in San Francisco of what it is here in West Michigan. So that does put you at risk. So you can't be too low. It's great at first, but then that's going to work against you. So we got to get compensation to a better place, I think, to attract talent as well. You're also not going to get people to come here. Typically, if you're going to offer them 69% of the national average, and so so that's a big piece. I think that has to be solved to attract tech talent. But ultimately, you got to go beyond. You always have, when you're recruiting, you always have to go beyond compensation and talk about, what is that next opportunity for you? What's a superior opportunity for you? What are you looking for? And then from there, that's when you have to build that case. Ultimately, I'm going to say this, finally, as a recruiter, a lot of these jobs, like you said, you post a job, they could sit there for a year or two. So you have to have an active strategy to go out and find these people where they're at. Your leadership has to be involved, and you have to mobilize your own employees, and you have to use other resources as well. So.
All right, take compensation off the table for this quick follow-up question for you. Is there like a common objection you hear when you're recruiting somebody to West Michigan? Now, the weather, Stella mentioned that, but what are some of the common objections about, I'm not sure about moving?
Well, first of all, the weather. I hate the cold, but if I lived in Texas for 13 years, and July and August really sucks too. So you don't want to be outside then, right? So the summers here are awesome. There's a lot of things to do here in the winter. January, February, maybe a little bit of March I could do without, but other than that, the weather really isn't that bad here. Could use maybe some more sunshine. But it really just goes back to people just don't, we're kind of at the cusp. We have a lot of amazing things here. We have a lot of amazing things that are on the horizon, the amphitheater, the soccer stadium. We have a young workforce here, but it's not like, it's the next Austin or Boise. We got to go move there. But as we continue to do the right things, that's going to happen. And so that's why I say you got to start with what is a superior opportunity for you, and then we can sell West Michigan and Grand Rapids. But the biggest thing is just a lot of people just don't know about Grand Rapids. When I moved here, all my friends were like, "Why are you moving to Detroit?" I was like, it's like not even close to Detroit. So I'm just as close to Chicago as I am to Detroit. So that's changing, but I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
All right. So what's Grand Rapids? Stella. All right. Your question, and you talked about this in your introduction, so this is a chance for you to expand on that a little bit. Beyond relying on our local pipelines, the students graduating from the local universities, how and why is attracting and retaining international talent a winning strategy for the region?
Yeah. So I was watching one of these TED Talks. I don't know if you guys have seen. This is by Dominic A. something. I'm probably going to butcher his name, but he talks about why Poland is kind of the upcoming next tech hub from a global standpoint. And then he goes on about 5 elements, and I'll try to remember everything, the 5 elements that make a place a tech hub. A culture of entrepreneurship, high density of skilled labor, and large investments in high tech, and public capital that catalyzed the reaction. And can anyone guess the 5th one? Immigration. You look at Silicon Valley, such high percentage of entrepreneurs who are immigrant workers and immigrants. You look at Israel on the global map, high density of skilled workers and immigrants. When Russia happened and all the refugees and Jews came back to Israel with such high talent and nurses and things like that. And what you will notice is that there is that recognition that you can't get to the next level without that group of diverse workforce. And so I think it is extremely important for us to understand that there are proven patterns ahead who have been ahead of us, who have blazed the trail, who have recognized that hiring immigrant workers and international talent is key to go to the next level. With that said, I think within our organization, when I started off Salesforce as a journey, we were a team of 5, and fairly new. No one knew about Salesforce as much. We kind of had like a vanilla flavor of implementation, but we really, went deep in 2016. And fast forward to today, we are a team of 30 full-time employees. And I have anywhere from 10 to 30 contractors, and I have international labor, both outsourced and also people that are working here. One of the key successes, the key reasons for our success is being very intentional. As Art said, if we have open positions for more than a year and no one's applying, there's a problem. We can't blame the environment. What can you do within your sphere of influence to make that change happen? And so I think we were very intentional in saying, okay, who can we reskill within our own organization? Who has that interest and passion, right? We did that. And then we asked ourselves, are there contracting labor that we can hire and then possibly convert into a full-time employee? So this was an active partnership with our HR teams and our consulting partners to make sure that happened. So we had a large scale of those conversions who happened to be, again, immigrant workers for whom I've had to sponsor work visas. And then we also looked at internships and making sure that we have talent from the students, from the grassroots level. But again, interns is usually a smaller scale, like a couple per year, but my demand was so high. And then most recently, we're looking with active partnerships with WinCat, Step It Up, expansion, USD expansion, to say, can we create an apprenticeship program where people from other areas, like we were just talking about outside, maybe a call center staff or someone who was a nurse in the past is now interested in getting into tech, what can we do to create a curriculum that will allow them to learn Salesforce, get them certified in Salesforce, and then bring them on? So again, I'm really excited. We're going to get a little larger pipeline there because now we have a larger group of people coming through that structured and disciplined program. So I think one of the things we have to understand and recognize and then take action on is, what is that missing element? Yes, we have talent here, but if you're going to compete with the Austins and the Silicon Valley, you just need to start thinking a little higher in the level of what can we create as an environment, what can we do as organizations coming together to build that pipeline. So I would say, being able to diversify that thought and take action that will allow for these people to come in and then settle down. Another example I will say is, I was born and raised in India, and I graduated from a class that had 40% women. The institute is kind of one of the Ivy League of India, which is specialized in tech and science. So we had 40% women. And when I first took a job, I worked in multinational organizations like Qualcomm, Cypress Semiconductor, Samsung. You walk into that company and all of them based, some in India, some in Korea, we have a fairly decent women in the workforce. And then I come to the US, and this was back in 2012, I joined Corewell Health in 2013. I'm kind of like 1 in 20 in my room. And I look at her and I'm like, wow, I've never felt so alone. And that needs to change. We have to find out, why is there a barrier for women to either apply for a computer science degree, graduate and apply for a job, and make that a possibility. India produces 850,000 technical resources into the global workforce, 850,000 per year. So again, there's no dearth of talent, but because I've lived across the globe, my view has always been a global. When people say community, for me, community is totally different. It's a community where people from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different industries, all of us are coming together. So I look at problem solving at a more global level, and I really think we need to start tapping into those great opportunities that will transform West Michigan into a tech hub.
Thank you, Stella. And she mentioned some program that Corewell's doing with WIMCAT, and we're going to explore those a little bit. They're interesting model to follow. Daniel, my first question for you is very similar to Stella's. Is, what does attracting and retaining diverse candidates help competitiveness, Gentex, in the marketplace? So this diversity that we've been talking about and recruiting, how does that help you as an organization, as a global company, publicly traded, remain competitive?
Sure. As you know, technology changes it's fast, right? I think my kids ask me for a new PlayStation every year. There's a new PlayStation now, or you get a new iPhone every 3 months or whatever that is. As I talked about, we're very Midwestern thinking. We're getting the same 10 schools. GED is still very important to us. We get the same 10 schools. You get the same line of thinking, right? When we talk about diversity, we're talking about diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of experiences. That can come in all different shapes, colors, sizes, right? So we're not talking about anything specific. We're talking about people who have lived differently and thought differently and got taught differently. As our technology has changed, we've been very adamant about taking the word fit out of our recruiting practices. You may have heard that a lot. It used to be the number one reason someone didn't get a job from a manager is they didn't fit. Right, well, ultimately, what does that mean? A lot of times that meant they weren't like me, right? I didn't like them. They didn't like cars like I like. They didn't like my football team, whatever that was. So we've said that's a 4-letter word, 3-letter, 4-letter word. We can't say that. What is the real reason? We already have you. We already have me at Gentex. We need what we don't have. We need to fill those missing spots, right? And you can't do that without finding people who are different, with different backgrounds, with different geographical areas, different experiences, because they're going to look at problems differently. We see ourselves as a problem-solving company. You can't solve problems if we're all thinking the exact same thing, right? You're going to come into one solution or 2 solutions. No, there could be 100 different solutions, but what's the best out of those 100 solutions? And if you don't open yourself up to be able to think that way and be able to know that I don't know everything, right? We need to find someone that can help us do that. And they may not be like me, and that's okay. Do they add to our culture? They make us culturally. We don't want them to take away from our culture. We don't want deficit people. However, we do want people that will add to us and make us better, and make us think differently, and push us outside of the box that we've always been in. If you can't do that, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to compete with everybody. And so I think as a West Michigan community, we are slow on that, right? We need to be way better as a community to do that. And we're trying to do that and trying to push that. And I see it in our walls, right? We're still pushing that back and forth about what is the real reason that this person doesn't meet the criteria you're looking for. Do they have the capabilities? Do they have the skill set that we need? Let's talk about that then. We can push a little bit harder on that. So, and if we don't, we're going to be behind, and we're not going to succeed. What we've done a great job of being, looking at the things you see in our portfolio now. We've been working on it 15 years ago, right? So we're looking at what's 15, 20 years down the road. You have to, but you need people who can think differently. And what we've had to do recently is M&A to be able to do that. Right? We've had to purchase companies outside of our area to be able to get those technologies that will help us succeed. But can we do that here? We could. We just need to upskill, right? We need to go to the schools, and it's important for them to see people that look like them, that think the way they do, to say, I can be that. I remember early in my career, as I was progressing, I had another Hispanic male tell me, you know they ain't never gonna let you do that, right? And then I finally started progressing, and the one guy said, hey, that's awesome you're doing this, now don't mess it up for the rest of us. He didn't say mess. But that mindset, right, that we can't, that's prevalent in our area for our diverse individuals who live here, right? How can we change that mindset? And it's by seeing people that look like them and allowing them to have opportunities. I would say that opportunities are accessible for everybody, but that access isn't accessible to everybody. Does that make sense? Opportunities are out there. Accessibility to opportunities is not equitable. So we need to do a better job of finding that and allowing that for people in our area. That's how we become diverse. And if we can't do that, we're not going to do what we want to do. Right? We're not going to bring that tech talent to Grand Rapids, West Michigan area. That's important for all of us.
If I may add just one.
Sure.
One of the things that we have to ask ourselves as an organization, or whichever part you're in, is how do you define a high-performing technical worker? That's where everything starts to break apart, because we all have this perception saying, here's who is a high-performing. And we got to ask, and we got to discuss and talk about, is that truly what is required to be high-performing? Because a lot of the times, some people just have different personalities. Some people like heads down, just give me my thing. I want to do my stuff, right? I call this, I think it's from this book, Radical Candor. So they call them rock stars and superstars. Rock stars are, give me my thing. I can do this day in, day out, 5 years, 10 years from now. This is my place. Great, right? We need certain things like that where we can keep the lights up and running, maintenance, upgrades. And then you have superstars who are like, I need the next big thing, I need the next shiny thing, right? Are we able to provide them with those opportunities that help them get there? Now, the high performing in both categories could be different, but we need to recognize, just can't say this person doesn't have a growth mindset, so they're not a high performing resource, or this person is always jumping onto the next big thing, so I can't keep them down, so really they're not high performing. So I think we have to set ourselves up with the right mindset and saying who and what makes a highly successful or a high performing technical worker in our organization. So that's one thing. The second thing is when we recruit, you only have this short time frame of one-on-one discussions or panel discussions before you can hire talent. Know that people from some of those underrepresented groups don't interview well. Okay, let's just like be honest about it, right? When growing up in India, and talking up and bragging about yourself is usually not something that we are taught. And so when you come here, for me it was so hard to like force myself, because they're like, hey, you got to tell people what about your talents and what about your strengths that you're going to give them, and what value you're going to bring to the organization. It just doesn't come naturally. You have to train yourself to do that. And so I think we have to have that competency in the interviewers, in the panels, to look beyond those questions, either ask probing questions or find other ways to glean what they have in their background that they will bring as value to the organization. I always tell people that I mentor, always talk about your transferable skills. It can be anything. You could have been a nurse, you could have been a technician, you could have been a church staff member, you could be a kids mentor, whatever that is. You have transferable skills. Problem solving, collaboration, team building, growth. Those are all things that leaders want to listen. So I would highly encourage that as you talk to people or your own team members or colleagues, ask if you're in a position of leadership and have that authority to hire, ask yourself and redefine who a highly successful or a high-performing tech worker is. 2, if you're one of those who are on the other end looking for a job, focus and hit hard on your transferable skills. What are the things that you've done in the past, irrespective of which industry you are, that is going to bring value to the organization?
All right, thank you, Stella. Deb, what trends are you seeing from the state level? And you can maybe talk about some of the training funds that are available through federal and state. Are there any trends you're seeing from upskilling tech talent? And is there anything being prioritized now at the state and federal level
Sure.
for training specifically in tech?
Sure.
Existing employees focus on that, but also maybe just people that are unemployed looking to get into.
Yeah, and I love what this administration, Governor Whitmer, is doing in focusing on education, because we see, the data is the data, that as a person gets more education, the higher their wages are. So if we want to see people progress, we need to get them education. That might, again, it might be just certificates of, and then get them into the job. But we're looking, what we're seeing coming down from the feds, and we're experiencing, we talk about, my team is always talking about, we are blessed with opportunity. And we're real tired, but we keep moving forward. We have over $50 million that we're working with apprenticeships. That's an area that is not only the tech industry can take advantage of, but that is a earn as you learn model. That I would consider that. If you start an apprenticeship, and I'm glad that you mentioned apprenticeship. Traditionally, it's always been internship, right, within the tech field. But apprenticeship, if you want to retain, grab somebody in, keep them in the field, 90% retention. And you don't have to start them out at the top wages. It's gradual. As they learn, they increase wages. So the state of Michigan has millions of dollars that they're investing into apprenticeships. West Michigan Works has taken advantage of that and several programs, and you've got apprenticeship programs in West Michigan. I will say that there's 17,000 active apprentices in Michigan. However, only 179 of them are in information technology jobs. But West Michigan, it's 70% of them are here in West Michigan. So you all are the trendsetters for apprenticeship, but there's lots of growth there. So that's one area. The other area that I see, so that's new workers, right? You can pull them in there. The other area that is heavily invested in for education is that's the Going Pro Talent Fund. How many have heard of that? Going Pro Talent Fund. And again, West Michigan Works has been standout in bringing those dollars. It's over $55 million. Cycle 2 just opened, well, will be opening up in May, coming up very soon. And that's an area where employers can upskill their current employees. They can hire new employees and get OJT funding to help them pay to train that employee. And also they can get apprenticeship dollars as well. So there's a real focus on upskilling workers, bringing new workers in, and then taking that worker that you already have within your company, try before you buy. That's what I've heard from employers, try before you buy. Maybe you have an employee, and I think that was mentioned before too, that is doing one thing, but you see potential in them. That's awesome. Put them in an apprenticeship program within your company and build them up into a career pathway. So I see that there's lots of opportunity. The state is very much focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility into those. So we build it into the funds. We again see that what everybody else has said here, that our workforce has to be diverse. We will not grow as a state if we do not have a more diverse workforce, because, again, people like to see themselves. People like to see a mixture of people. And then that's what they're attracted to, particularly younger people are attracted to diverse workforce, women, people of color, you know, and we've got to build that within our programming. So much of the dollars that are being deployed out to the field, if you will, has that attachment to it, is that it's got to be connected. How are you going to make and attract a diverse workforce? If you're going to get those dollars, you got to explain that to us.
All right, thank you. And speaking of apprenticeship programs, a little bit of a pitch for West Michigan Works. In the tech area, we're working on we have a work group of local employers working on a cybersecurity apprenticeship program, kind of focus on the mid-level individual already employed that can go through about an 18-month program and come out with the apprenticeship. It's a long process. but we have a really strong employer group that's leading that charge on identifying, the training requirements for that. All right, Art, we're going back to you. This ties in well with your first question about recruiting people here to live and work. What's been the impact of remote work on your recruitment efforts now? Why do you, if you have a company here, why move here when you can still work for a company in this area? Or has that impacted your work, and how does it impact initiatives on building a tech hub? It seems like the tech hub is the world now, right? The United States, you don't have to live in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen some interesting shifts. With COVID, when you look at our clients and organizations that are looking to try to help find talent, there's really three versions. They have to be in the office every single day. There's a hybrid option, and then it's a completely work from home option. And what we're finding is that obviously the people that need to be in the office 5 days a week, those are the most challenging searches to fill right now. The easiest ones are completely remote. But we're actually starting to see a trend go the other way a bit, where workers, especially young workers, have decided that, or starting to decide that they don't like to be completely remote, and they're looking for some community. And so and we've even seen this within our own organization, not tech talent, but recruiting talent. People are coming to us and saying, hey, I'm in a fully remote role, and I just, I don't want to do that anymore. And in fact, I think our last 5 hires have all said that to me. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have an opportunity to come in, but I want the flexibility to work from home. And even the individuals that come in 5 days a week anyways, they still want the flexibility to work from home. Just the fact that it's there it is important for them. It's comforting for them. And so we have seen talent, remote workers that have boomeranged back to the community that are working remotely for organizations. With kind of some things that are going off in the tech layoffs and that kind of thing, you're starting to see those people here locally look for work as well, and so that's impacting it as well. But from a attracting standpoint or retention standpoint, you really gotta have some flexibility in there. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think I was at the Burge conference yesterday. I know some of you were there too, and that question, if you're having coffee or just sitting around a table at lunch with other tech workers, especially younger workers, that comes up all the time, that discussion about where do you work and do you work hybrid. I think it would be interesting to see how it plays out in this area. I know it's impacted a lot of companies that we work with too. All right, Stella, you mentioned about the program that Corewell does with WMCAT, and it's the, I guess, UST expansion, you step it up. Could you talk to the group? I'm not sure how many people know about that, but these are really looking at like the employer being the driving the upskilling and the talent. Can you talk?
Yeah. So shout out to my friend Sharon Waldenet, and she and I really have the same wavelength in terms of how we can diversify our workforce, and she works as part of the office of the CIO at Corewell. And the program, I actually started last year, and they've seen some really good success. However, the technology and the skill sets that they were trained on were slightly different. And this year we're going to be focusing on Salesforce specifically. And the program is basically focused on how can we look at ways to reskill those from a diverse background that are underrepresented in our organization. So it's a very intentional, targeted and focused approach to look at the value that some of these groups bring to the workforce, whether it's creative problem solving, whether it's better collaboration, better cultural competency, tolerance, so on and so forth. And so with that, the partnership basically includes WMCAT, Step It Up, and USDA expansion. And we're looking at an approach where the group goes out and tries to find people from different backgrounds that have an interest and want to move into tech. And then they go through some basic behavioral type of testing and just make sure that they have the right, you know, what can I say, the attitude and the aptitude to get into the workforce. And most of these guys have been fairly successful in other areas, whether as a nurse and some of them as a musician and so on and so forth. So they've established themselves, but now they're like, you know, have this interest in tech or have had this passion since childhood and you know, have never had the opportunity to go into that. Then we as an employer come in with a curriculum and say, here's what my need is, and here's the problem that I have with lack of talent. And so this is a win-win-win, a win for the organization because we're getting that talent and we are having those diversified groups represented in the organization. It's a win for the community because we're giving an option and a platform for people to get trained in things that are highly niche expertise skill set, and it's a win for other organizations who are trying to maximize the funding that they're getting and want to make sure that, you know, we're doing good to the community. So I look at this as a win-win-win. And so then we come in as a employer and say, here's the curriculum, here's my need, here's how I can partner, which is hands-on training. Things like, here's how we do it here with Salesforce, or here's some of the integration boundary systems. So there's a commitment from our side to train them, to mentor them, and to get them acclimatized to what we have to do. And then after the program is done, we do require that they get certified. So in this case, this is going to be a 6-month program. We actually just finished interviews last week. We interviewed 24 candidates and shortlisted 8, and excited that all of 8 of them accepted the offer. So we're really excited. This is going to be a 6-month program. It's going to be rigorous, it's going to be tough, but we got to move on. We got to keep pressing on, and we're there to help them. So they're not alone. But this has to have, the individuals have to have that intrinsic motivation to achieve, that passion to do it, to keep going. And so I think those are some of the things we look in the interview process. It's a panel interview. So we go through the 6 months program. They do have to get Salesforce certified, and once they're certified, we make a commitment that we hire them into the organization, depending on how many of them have passed the certification. So again, this is going to be a 6 months to 1 year before we actually see them in our offices, but you know, there's going to be a lot of touch bases with collaboration and projects and capstans and other things that we'll be doing together. But I'm really excited because I really think this is one creative way to solve the problem.
Thank you. I'm familiar with a lot of these upskilling programs for adults that are looking to move into tech. And, you know, the Achilles heels oftentimes has been there's not a job at the end of it. You go through these programs and then you're back in the job market competing, and you're a non-traditional individual, maybe not coming out of a computer science program, for example, but there's no job tight in the end. This is, to me, this program, to have an employer committing to hire these people as they complete the program is a great model. It's a really great model, and I think it takes you know, a lot of the risk off of those students that might be overlooked for those adults. Thanks, Stella. Daniel, during our get to know each other, we had a Zoom meeting with all of us. You talked quite a bit about what Gentex is doing on eliminating barriers for employment and career development. And I thought it was super interesting, some of the programs that you're doing that maybe it's kind of done quietly, but when he talks about them, you know, the intentionality at Gentex of eliminating barriers for people to not only be employed but to advance their careers, I thought was you know, just outstanding. Could you share a little bit about some of those?
Yeah, so there's 3 very specific things that we kind of tackled the last couple of years, and you may have heard some of them, you may not have, but we started initially with a program for Spanish speakers. So prior to 2020, if you didn't read and speak in English, you couldn't get a job at Gentex. I mean, my parents were migrant workers, right? So I was leading talent acquisition at Gentex. I couldn't hire most of my family at Gentex. It seemed wrong. And in Ottawa County, so many people are Spanish-speaking individuals that want great work, right? They want to find a good place to work and opportunities. You know, I talk about that access to opportunities isn't equitable, right? How do we make that equitable for these group of individuals? So we started a program, and it wasn't just about hiring Spanish-speaking people. Anybody can hire Spanish-speaking people. But are they coming into an inclusive environment? That's the hard part, right? That's the work comes into. What do you do before you bring someone in the door? And we were not going to bring anyone into Gentex without having we basically operate as a two-language company now, where, you know, your application's in Spanish, your interview's in Spanish, your leader can speak Spanish, your work instructor in Spanish, we can use ESL opportunities. And so started early 2021, we're gonna start with a couple lines, make sure we do this right. And we've grown from that to we're about 230 Spanish-speaking individuals now throughout the organization. And about 30 of those have moved out of the Spanish-speaking areas into other roles and upskilling and learning different phrases and things that help them along the way. And I've had many talks about this program with people that think, oh, we should do that, we should do that. And they find out that it's not as easy as you think it is, and they're like, maybe we won't do it like that, right? Well, guess what? It's not going to work then, right? And this isn't just Spanish-speaking people. We need to make sure that environment is good for everybody walking in the door, right? What it did do, though, we were so hyper-focused on it, we're like, well, we're doing that for everybody else. We should probably do that too, right? So that helped us even grow in ourselves of how we learned this program. And then transportation is a barrier. So we knew we had a lot of people who would love to work at Gentex, who live in the Grand Rapids area, and gas got expensive, cars are expensive. Sometimes winter sucks, right? Driving in the winter is not great sometimes. So next month, May 15th, I think it's SOP, we're going to open a facility in the Cottage Grove, Madison Ave area where people can walk to work and they can ride a bus to work. Give them the opportunity to have great jobs, high-tech jobs. That's what we do. We're a high-tech company, and be able to learn from that and grow from that, and let them know that if you do want an opportunity to be able to do that, you can do that here in your backyard. Because a lot of those people just don't know. I remember when we first started these programs, we had someone who would work at McDonald's in the summer and then go work on the other side of the state because they didn't realize there was opportunities for them here, right? Well, during the summer, one, you can work for us, come work for us, right? And then stay here, find jobs here. So allowing them to be in their backyard helps that. Transportation, take that barrier away. And then a daycare. We're going to open a daycare in early 2024. That's Gentex for Gentex employees. Daycare stuff, right? Because it's crazy expensive. When me and my wife first started having children, she stayed home. And we barely made it because daycare is expensive. And sometimes I see people now, mom working first shift, dad working second shift, and they swap the baby in the middle, right? They don't see each other because they can't afford daycare. So, we're going to have a daycare for our employees that they can come to work, drop their kid off safe, and it's expensive, right? And there's a lot of red tape, but man, it's so important, and everybody's so excited. And what that has done, those were specific to tech talent. When I talk about tech talent, I want to know what you're doing in your community. What are you doing for your people? That's what we're doing. That's what they want to see. They want to be part of that, right? Now, do we need a competitive wage course? Do we do all that stuff? Yes. But when I go there, am I going to be taken care of as an individual? Are they going to care about me, who I am as a person? And by doing these things, we've said, yes, we are going to do that. People see that, and that has helped us. Yes, there's a reason we did it, to get people, to keep people and to retain people. Man, it's just the right thing to do, right? And by doing those things, we've been successful, and it's helped us grow and helped us be better. Because a lot of those individuals come with different demographic, backgrounds and different traits of thought, and they've taught us a lot of good things. And that's continued to happen, and we're going to get better because of that. So limiting those barriers for employment, providing great opportunities for people, access to opportunities has helped us grow as a company, as individuals, and will help us grow in technology as well.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, Deb, you mentioned apprenticeship programs is something that the state's putting a lot of resources behind. Are there any other new partnerships or programs, whether it's public or private, with the state that you've seen? Maybe it's not even in Michigan, but maybe other parts of the country that you feel will have a significant impact on workforce development?
Yeah, what's coming, right?
Yeah, what's coming?
What's coming? One thing I haven't mentioned, but it's been alluded to here, is that the employers in the driver's seat for developing and letting education know what skills and competencies are needed for the employees. What we call that at the state is sector strategies, where a group of employers, so we scale it up, not just one employer, because what we're seeing across the country, but it's in Michigan as well, is that employers just steal from one another. And we can continue to do that, or we can come together as an employer-led collaborative and talk about how do we solve this problem of not having enough talent, and what resources does the state need to give us to solve this problem. West Michigan has done a phenomenal job developing those employer-led collaboratives. I think you call them industry-led collaboratives, correct? In Southeast Michigan, we have the electric vehicle jobs academy. That's going to be coming to West Michigan. There's going to be a lot of, there's mobility jobs there, engineers, that sort of thing. There's also tech jobs, software developers. Again, software developers seems to keep rising to the top. So we're seeing this, that employer-led collaboratives is critical. It scales it up so that when we have 100 jobs open, rather than 5 or 6 jobs that a single employer can have, a group of employers can have a large number. And then our education providers, and that's when our education providers have always said to me, Deb, it's about butts in the seats. I can't do single, small classes. We're just not built that way. So if we bring employers together, those employers can talk about their needs, can talk about the skills, the competencies that their workers need, and then pull those educators in, pull workforce in. Where do you think those people are coming to? They're coming to your local Michigan Works agency. They're coming in the doors, they're calling on the phone, looking for jobs. And then a lot of our funding at the state are deployed through our Michigan Works agencies. So if we can get a group of employers together, looking at more large scale, if they can agree, we're not saying they have to 100% agree with one another, but if we can get to the 70 and the 80 percentile of agreement for those skills and competencies, then our educational system can build those classes, build that curriculum that's needed to put larger amounts of students in. And then the employers can hire, that's your talent pipeline, they can hire them, and then that 20% is proprietary to that employer, and they can train them at the local organization or company. So that's where we're seeing things going. EV Jobs Academy, Electric Vehicle Jobs Academy, is our newest employer-led collaborative. Last week, we released $4.7 million for employer-led collaboratives. Now, this is a request for proposals. So, a group of employers coming together to solve common workforce needs. $4.7 million is out there, and we're looking at $100,000 to $500,000 awards in order to support those employer-led collaboratives. It's expensive. You need a host organization that can corral employers together and to make sure agendas are done and to make sure events are coordinated. So the state is supporting those employer-led collaboratives, and then it just becomes a win. It becomes a win for the employer, it becomes a win for our workers, and it becomes a win for our communities, because who wants to come to a community that has no workers? It draws other employers into the community. So that's where potential.
Thank you. All right, Art, you get this fun question here. All right. And this is kind of the inspiration for this. Remember about 4 years ago, maybe it was 8, there's a guy that ran for president from the Rent is Too Damn High party. Remember that guy? Well, anyways, Art, should we be careful what we ask for when pursuing becoming a tech hub? And we kind of talked about this amongst ourselves a little bit on our phone call, but what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, clearly I think the benefits outweigh the negatives, but, for anybody that's ever been to Austin, and seeing some of the impacts that it's had on there. I sure will miss my 12-minute commute from Ada with no traffic. So yeah, I mean, I think there are some cons around potential things like, you know, some challenges that it might cause with housing, traffic, but you know, we have a pretty good infrastructure here and one to kind of build a foundation on. I think we'll be okay. And I do think, you know, if we're talking about doubling our tech workforce, we're really talking about you know, an additional 20,000 workers in that space. And yes, it will create some challenges, but I think we have a pretty good infrastructure here to build on. I think we'll be okay.
All right. Stella, anybody else want to comment on that question?
No, I think, I mean, you're seeing right now with the Silicon Valley, people are leaving to either go to, you know, Arizona or Texas. So it is happening. You know, it has become very hard to live and afford housing, schooling, and other things. But I think, as Art mentioned, the benefits outweigh, you know, the cons. But I think it takes a lot of system thinking approach. Like, what if you are projecting that growth? Are we able to be nimble and agile enough to make sure we're making appropriate changes in infrastructure, broadband, whatever that might look like, right? I think that's going to be important. And then, of course, with the whole remote, it's TBD to see how much of that remote work continues and sustains. Because even with the hybrid approach, the challenge is like people want to come, but if the rest of the team is not coming, they're like, you're coming there and just working alone. So there's those interesting challenges with remote work. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think employers will have a lot to weigh in on those trends. Community organizations like Right Place or Grand Rapids Chamber or others will also have a lot of good roles to play as we build and project this future of a tech hub. Yeah.
And this guy moves right into my next question for you a little bit. Could you expand on the systems approach to developing a diverse tech talent pipeline?
Yeah, and I'll speak a little bit about, you know, my personal story. Although I didn't graduate from any of the colleges and universities here, my husband did, and I have several friends who are doing it. So you have amazing colleges that are doing a really good job in attracting international students, right? So step one, solved. We're getting that talent. Now, step two, there is a very competitive program both within the organization, the schools that are training them, including some of these partnerships that are going on with corporates and schools, to make sure that they are training them to be market ready. It's one thing to know the knowledge and the classes and the courses. It's another thing to be ready to be working in the workforce. So there's just these nice, interesting programs that are allowing for that. So step two, check if that's happening. Now, you also have that when they are done and they are ready to be employed, there's just not enough of people around here, whether it's from an organization or employers, who understand the whole work visa sponsorship. And so then you have them like literally panicking because they come here to make this their home. They don't have people who understand the struggles that they're going through. Some of them, most of them know the language, but I do know that there are certain people, at least, you know, from the Asian American background, who also struggle with language issues. And so now you have this interesting mix of these problems where the law of the land does not allow for them to work, even if they wanted to. You have employers who are maybe aware of the issue, but not investing enough to understand what the problem is and make sure that they are creating that awareness internally within their organizations through their HR, their legal counsel, and getting up to speed on how do we make sure that we not just, you know, have these people coming in from outside of the country but not able to create that student to business pipeline. So I think that's where it is broken, and I've been an advocate, especially in Corewell Health. I'm kind of the founder for the Asian Resource Group, and one of the things we do every year is to bring in our legal counsel and have these panel discussions. And we have like people pouring in. You are having people from Africa, from South America, from, you know, Asian countries coming in and asking, tell me, how do I get employed? What do I do with this problem? I have a wife that needs to come here. So there's our real problems, and these are really talented individuals, and we just don't have a way to build that pipeline. So I think what we should look at it as a systems level approach, because I know Grand Rapids Chamber, and I say that because I work very closely with them. They have these great welcome program, right? They try to welcome immigrants, welcome international students. So how can we partner with them, with the student organizations and the educational institutions and the corporates to take a three-pronged approach to say how do we bring people but also keep them within our community. And that requires commitment from all. We create an environment from community organizations. They're committing to create an environment that's welcoming, that they feel belong, that they feel like they're empowered to be who they are as a whole person. The organizations are empowering the students with the contacts, the information, the resources that they need to navigate the community and towards the organization. And then the organizations are making a commitment saying, you know what, I do have a problem to solve. I do know the skill set is available, but what can I do to train leaders? Because a lot of the times, people will see the resume and, well, I have to sponsor this person, so we're not even going to look at them. I'm big on meritocracy. I've played basketball. I'm a sports person, so I have this winning mindset. I don't compromise. Winning is the goal. And so I don't say that we should compromise on meritocracy, but let's not ignore talent because we just don't know enough about work visas and we don't want to consider that resume. Give them a genuine opportunity to go through that, and you will be surprised in how they will deliver. And back to the point on loyalty. It is very well known that a lot of these folks, especially international students who are coming in, have that sense of loyalty because you heard them, you were with them in those most vulnerable times where they needed that work visa, and they stick with you and they go above and beyond to deliver, and that loyalty pays off. So again, I think it is important that we encourage our employers to understand, to learn, to invest in getting themselves trained in how do you sponsor work visas, how do you allow for this pipeline to not be leaky but stay within the organizations. I think it definitely requires a systems thinking approach, but we have to define the problem, identify the problem, and come into acting on it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Stella. There's a great website, if you might not be familiar, some people in the audience, LyzengaTechPipeline.com, and it talks a lot about the issues that we talked about. And that kind of leads into our last question for Daniel, then we're going to go around the room for some closing remarks. On that website, they talk about barriers and biases in hiring and recruiting. You mentioned in your first introduction about fit. Can you talk a little bit about any specific things when you talk about biases in hiring, and how do you remove them, like tactically?
Yeah, so one thing that we did is I think it's important we all do it, is we did unconscious bias training with all our recruiters and all our managers. Surprise, we all have biases, right? And if you don't know it, it's because it's unconscious, right? So understanding what those biases are, so you will never be able to overcome them if you don't know you have them, right? And I remember the first time, it wasn't the first time, I knew there was biases, even when I was talking to people, and we all have experiences that shape our beliefs or in our actions and whatnot, and those are what dictate what your biases are, right? Even if you don't know it. And when I first started realizing, like, holy cow, I was holding this person back for no other reason. It's because I had this deep-seated thing that happened to me when I was younger that caused me to act this way, right? And I remember the first time I had a conversation with a manager, like, man, I want to apologize to you because I purposely didn't want to work with you because I had this bias of who you were. He was like, oh, what happened? I had no idea this was going on, right? But if we don't do that with our recruiters initially, because we are the gatekeepers who comes into our doors, right? We're the first people they talk to, and if they don't get past us, they don't get to anybody, right? So we had to start there. But then our managers, well, I talked about the fit thing. They need to understand that people, different demographics do interview differently, as Stella mentioned, right? They don't interview the same. For a long time, like, we wanted to hire the football player that worked on cars, right? Well, not everybody's like that. And if you do that, you're going to miss out so many different talent things. There's so much different softwares out there that help you understand our job profiles. Are they most of them are masculine then, right? There's masculine words in there that prevent females from even applying to the job, right? Are you missing things in those things? There's so many softwares out there that help you understand how to post a job, what this means, because we don't always know, right? But there's a lot of things out there to help do that, and we've done some of that work. And panel discussion is always very good too. It's never my decision, your decision, that's it, right? Well, we need a group of people to understand what's happening and how we get better, because I can't decide all the roles at Gentex. We're not going to do well, actually. We're going to do really bad, actually, if I'm picking all the roles at Gentex. But as a group, we can understand and push each other and make each other grow. Iron sharpens iron, right? By having those panel discussions helps us to do that as well. And really just understanding, being able to understand different trains of thought it's so important. And we all have different trains of thought. Every single one of us has something to bring. And it's important for us to allow that person to come in an interview to be able to show what that is as well. Because people come in interviews and they're nervous, right? And they want you to like me for, I'm going to try to act like what you think I want you to act me like. Well, no, I want to know who you are, right? Yes, I want you to learn what we do, but I also want you to bring something. We already have, like I said, we already have me and them. What are you going to bring to us that's going to help us be better? And it's important for us to teach that and train that and to push that in our organization so everybody sees that mindset. Everybody thinks that way. To allow people to be their true selves. And when you can do that, we're going to be successful together.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Well, our timing is good. We have one last short question for each panelist, then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So everybody's got the same question here. Can you share one call to action that would move us closer to becoming a tech hub from your perspective and your superpowers at your organization where you work for?
I would say wherever you are, and whether you are an employer, whether you are an educator, whether you are with a nonprofit organization, pull together and collaborate. This problem was not born yesterday. We have had a talent shortage for years, and it won't be solved by one organization. So my challenge to all of you is find each other and don't, or if you can, move away from what you're used to and to more, what can we do as a community to solve this problem? You will be miles ahead of anyone else that is building tech talent in the state of Michigan.
Thank you. Same question, Art.
Well, it all starts with education, in my opinion. You know, we can do a lot of things to try to recruit talent from outside in, but that's really just a small piece of the puzzle that we're trying to solve. And it starts with, partnering with higher education institutes to help keep talent that need to be sponsored. It starts with getting involved in the K-12 system, and even in our urban schools, investing in that. It's doing things like, as organizations, engaging with schools and programs. There's some companies that, one of them, Atomic Object, has done a great job of doing that kind of thing. And so if we want to solve this tech talent, we're not going to become a tech hub overnight. It's going to happen over time. And if we don't solve the issue of education, and we're not investing in that and partnering with our schools to solve that problem, then we're not going to get there. As much as I'd love to say, yeah, we'll hire AEBetancourt, we'll recruit all 20,000. It's not going to happen. It's as a community, us working to say, we have that talent here. They might not be ready right now, but we're going to invest in the future, and they'll become ready. And there is a lot that's here right now that wants to stay. And there's all kinds of great things that we can be doing to help them stay. I'm on a corporate advisory board for graduate career services at Notre Dame, and we work with a lot of these students that are looking for sponsorship, and they just don't, I do a lot of practice interviewing with them, and in their culture, they're used to interviewing this one specific way. And so it's funny, you kind of jump on the call, and then they do their thing, and you're like, okay, that was fun, but let me coach you on doing it this way now. And it's really a conversation here, and this is how you portray yourself. And man, they learn fast. They want to be here, they want to learn, and so we need to capture the talent that's coming out of the pool now and keep them here, but invest in the talent that's that's our future as well.
So along the same lines, I like to use this: know me, include me, and empower me. Know your community. Know what they're having as problems and barriers. Know their strengths. Know the opportunities and know the threats that are out there. So know, include me. Include the people that are struggling in your problem solving. Partner with community organizations that know more about their communities and make sure that they are part of that solutioning, and don't do that in a silo. And then empower me. Once you have that, and make sure you educate and empower all of the resources that are there, whether it's the employers, the employees, potential candidates, students, empower them with the right resources, the right information and education. So know your community, include your community, and empower your community.
Great. I know I've mentioned a couple of times, but I can say it forever because I think it's so important. It's just access to opportunities. It's on us to create those and provide those opportunities for people from outside our community, right? From in our community and outside our community. Can we see people who look different, act different, think different, and be okay with that? That's on us to do that, right? And I think you're here because that kind of things are important to you. How can we share that message? How can we push against people who don't want to think that way? Because that's out there as well, right? So how can we change those mindsets and really push? I think that's our job to not be okay with those trains of thought, right? It is okay. We are all different, and that's a good thing. So, yeah, thanks.
All right. Can we have a round of applause for the panel? We have a few minutes for some questions. So I have the microphone, I'll give it away. This is not always a good idea to give the microphone to somebody else, but we'll try it.
Hi all, thanks for being here, thanks for sharing. I'm Danny Guido. I own Next Point Design. We're a design agency here in West Michigan. We work with a lot of tech companies on design, helping user experience, customer experience. What I know from a lot of tech hubs around the world, tech centers, there's a robust understanding of how design plays a role in tech and innovation. Kind of a spot question for you, but what are you thinking about for, we're including tech, but including design within this tech conversation? What are your thoughts about, are you thinking about that? How are you recruiting for that as well?
I can take a stab at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like to give this example. In my space, I really value our call center staff because they are the voice of our customer. They know better than any one of us. You could be the highest paying individual in the company, but you probably don't know the problems that our customers are facing because you're not on the phone day in and day out with them. And so one of the things we value is that human-centric design, that voice of the customer, that representation and advocacy for what's going on out there on the field when they're going to a doctor or when they're trying to pay a bill. And we could be the best coders and developers, but if you don't know what problem you're solving, then it's no good. So I really think that I see that as part of it. I've never seen design as outside. I've always assumed design, you build in that quality, you build in that design, and make sure that the problem that you're solving is actually the need. I also like to give this example where, I could have a donut and a cookie, and I can go to my boys, who are 8 and 6, and say, which one do you want? I want a cake, I want a Sprite. And then you're like, wait, I just offered you the two best, like your favorite cookie and your favorite donut. No, but I wanted cake and I wanted Sprite. And so you see the problem there, like I've had all the good intentions, I know that they like this, but at that time, at that moment, they wanted something else. And I think we should recognize who within our organization, whether it's staff, environmental services, nutrition services, call center staff who know that, and bring them into that. And so design and that human-centric approach and that discipline in identifying that voice of the customer is going to be extremely important, because you can build all the high tech, but if you don't know how to use it, like even ChatGPT right now. Now the buzzes are, you need to know the right prompts. You don't know the right prompts is no good with your ChatGPT, right? So there's always going to be that trigger, and to find that trigger, design is a key step of it. So yeah.
We've done a few design roles over the last year, and we found that West Michigan is kind of a bit of a hidden gem for design talent, and surprisingly, there's quite a bit here. So in that space, I don't know if it's enough to meet the future demand, but I feel pretty good about what's here currently and opportunities for them. So.
Hi, my name is Arya, and I'm a grad student here at GVSU. I'm in the Data Science Analytics program, and I want to say thank you so much for bringing forth all the problems that we are facing. And special thanks to Stella for talking about the problems faced by international students, because I'm the vice president of the student organization here for Data Science Society, and I can tell you, like, 80% of our cohort is international students, and they're going to graduate this year, but most of them are still facing problem getting internship, and a lot of them have a prior experience of data analysis. They came here just to get the formal degree so they can have better prospects, and it's really heartbreaking to see them going through that, the stress and the problem of not getting an internship. My question basically is that, as you said, that women have to face, different challenges when it comes to joining the workforce. And as a single mom myself, I feel like single moms have more of a challenge, because we have to juggle not just education or work, but also the kids and paying for the daycare and how to do the time management. It would be really great to see something from the side of the industry that would, enable moms to join the workforce, because I feel like we bring a lot of transferable skills. I don't think anybody can multitask as well as a single mom can. So I feel that what do you think the industry can do to uplift single moms? Thank you.
Sure. I can start on that. I think, for example, the daycare thing, right? I think it's important for single moms, and you're right. I mean, my wife's not single, but she's still a superwoman, right? I mean, she does so much in our household, and be able to have that career. Like I talked about, right? When we decided that we needed someone to stay home to babysit, it was her, right? It doesn't always have to be that way. That's how we chose. That's how I was brought up, right? How do we change those mindsets so to understand that there's differences in the fact that a single mom, vice president of an organization, getting a degree from GVSU is amazing, right? And the internship thing is funny too. I was hearing some stats and some data from the COVID years, and we had a lot of virtual career fairs at that time. At that time, it was very easy for an employer to say, I don't want to talk to this, and this, right? So what I was finding out was a lot of international students weren't even getting talked to, because they weren't allowed to be in these career fairs, right? So these in-person ones became very important to them because no one's going to see me otherwise, right? So how can we as employers help understanding that there are some great talent out there that we need to be providing opportunities for people to, access to opportunities, right? It's important, and thank you for what you're doing. And it is on us as industry leaders to make a push to say we need to do better. And that's really on us. We just need to be better.
And I also think that, unfortunately, we have to keep voicing those concerns. I have 3 kids, 8 years, 6 years, and 2 years. I've been a busy mom all my life and continue to work as well. There are times when I was overlooked for a promotion because I was out on maternity leave. And it definitely hurts because you put in all the effort and so you have to voice that concern that you say, hey, I'm noticing that this is not equitable. Yes, I was not here during my maternity leave, but I was doing something that is important for us to raise a family or raise a generation. I've made a personal decision that I wanted to breastfeed my child, and we didn't have pumping facilities at work at that time, and so I would go into the shower room in the gym area and put in the curtain and do that. That's a problem. So I think it is unfortunate, but I think it is high time that both, like I said, know me, include me, and empower me, include those people in your problem solving. We need to be able to provide an environment that's equitable for women. And then the fairness goes a long way. I think some women can't walk immediately after their maternity leave. They need some more time. Although at least now we're all remote, so clearly that's out of context. At that time it was a big deal. Like if I was asking that I needed to work home because I needed more time to heal from a surgery, that was like a big deal. It needed HR, it needed manager approval. But I mean, it goes on to say that how much are we willing to be fair? Yeah, your other employees may not need that, but are you willing to make that case to be equitable and provide an environment for one who needs that? So I would say keep voicing those demands, and you have a platform based on your own role to be that voice for several other women who don't have that and don't take that lightly. And I say that to myself when I say that to you, is I don't take my role and the privilege of having a platform to speak out about it very lightly. And so we got to make sure we keep telling them, because change is like turning a Titanic. It doesn't happen overnight, right? You're going to start now, but by the time you see the change, who knows, you may not be around, but at least you know you've sown the seeds.
We do a quick plug in BRGs, ERGs, and organizations, industry support groups, support resource groups.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very strong women at Gentex, BRG. I can't pretend to know what a female feels like, right? A woman feels like, her mom feels like. But that group has done a great job of letting us know that voice that we're talking about, Stella's talking about. When I feel like I don't have a voice, well, here's a group that has a great voice in Gentex that tells us what we need to hear, right? And I think those are, as in your industries, in your work, those things are so important. People want to be included in something, be heard. That helps people be heard.
I will mention also, we're hearing that at the state, childcare is a tremendous issue. It's very expensive. We have the Try-Share program. We really are encouraging, there's not enough employers involved, but the Try-Share program helps pay for childcare, where the employer pays 1/3, the state pays 1/3, and the parent pays 1/3. It helps get primarily women, because we take care of the kids, but it helps get them back into the workforce. So we're pushing that agenda, just so you know, and we're putting our dollars behind our talk as well, but it's a slow road and there's lots of work to be done yet.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on the first part of Mara's concern. She actually understated it. Over 90% of our data science students, graduate students, are international, and they are really struggling with getting that required internship that they're ready to graduate, but they can't until they get an internship. And what we're running into is that I think most employers in West Michigan know that tech skills like computer science or cybersecurity are 3-year extension OPT qualified, but they're not as familiar with that on data science or other non-traditional tech jobs. And so I'm just curious what your efforts are and what support you see for helping employers who might be a little fearful of, oh boy, we got to jump into the H-1B process. What can be done to bring that talent that's sitting here, but truthfully are being chased out of West Michigan because of that?
I can take a stab at it. So one of the things that we've done as part of the business research group that Daniel mentioned, we have to show ROI. At the end of the day, you have to show ROI. And I think it is extremely important for people who are in this position, whether it's the DEI space or the BRGs or even strategic positions in the company, are making investments to show the ROI. Now, there are different ways. We can get a lot of technical details. If you outsource the legal work, it is fairly expensive. So what we've done, at least in Corewell Health, is we've brought in that legal help within the organization. So that brings down the cost quite a bit. But however, leaders don't know. So you're able to create and make sure that they're aware that, hey, here are the steps you need to take. Here are the investments you will make during this process, and here is the ROI that you're going to gain. We also have risks, right? We're dealing with an immigration system. I've had employees where they were rejected, they had to leave the country that day, leaving kids, everything. They're just like all of them had to pack and leave in 2 days, right? I mean, can you imagine your life being shattered like that? So these are extremely vulnerable situations. So being able to create that awareness and then showing the ROI is what is going to be extremely important. And so I will highly encourage each of you, if any of you are in that space, please reach out to me. I'll take it on myself to respond and give you some tips on how you can make a case within your organization to say that this is a high ROI investment, whether you are sponsoring their work visa or doing certain things to get them on board and continuing to employ them. Like I said, loyalty is a big one we don't account for. They stay loyal to the organization. They're highly skilled workers and they are deeply committed to what they're doing, and a lot of the times people don't realize how much value add that is. And of course, they also come with a lot of experience. You were saying, none of these guys are fresh out of the college. Yes, they're graduating here, but most of them have had experiences elsewhere. So you can't undermine the power of that history. So work with your BRGs, DEI executives, make a case within strategy how this is going to be high ROI investment for you guys, and then make sure you have your employees and others, they have a forum to ask these questions. That would be the step one. Create a forum so that you're allowing these people to come and answer those questions, so that then you understand what issues they're going through. So that's something that I've been doing, or we've been doing as part of Corewell. I know other organizations are also probably doing in the community, but I would like to John's question, to take a more systems level approach. As a community, we could do more. We could partner more with community organizations to create those forums and that awareness. But yeah, that's going to be my 2 cents.
Speaking from my experience with the University of Notre Dame, at Notre Dame, we also take it upon ourselves as a responsibility in terms of getting an ROI on it, because international students are incredibly important to the program, and over time, if they're not getting good outcomes, that's going to get around, and we're going to start to see less and less of them, especially the high quality ones, applying and coming to the programs. And so at Notre Dame, there's graduate career services. They have people that are specifically focused on making sure those individuals get internships. And additionally, from a legal resource, they actually have legal resources where they actually are able to help employers with the visa process, because they see it as, and it's not just Notre Dame, but a lot of universities do that, but they see it as them getting an ROI by spending the money to give resources to help place people, but also to make the legal process smoother for the employers, and actually just help them understand the process as well.
Yeah, one more question, then we have to make room for the next session.
Well, thank you all for your time today and the insights. It's been amazing. I'd categorize a lot of the conversation today around buy versus build. How do we buy tech talent, right? How do we drive it to West Michigan, either remotely or physically? And how do we build our talent pipelines in the tech space so we don't have to buy, right? Buy's a risky business in a lot of ways. Especially when I think about West Michigan, I think about some of this area of the state retooling, our rural areas, our underserved urban communities, right? There's a lot of talent internally that maybe just doesn't know what a software developer is. They haven't even done software development quite a bit. So I think about that, and I've always had this thought around building talent and how we're able to do it. And I love the boot camp idea. Like, I love all those stories of perseverance, right? As a tech recruiter myself, you hear somebody talking about some of the challenges we expressed in this room. I'm a single mother, I'm going back to school, I'm taking this boot camp, and I put everything I have in my savings into this, right? And I'm going to make it happen because I have to for my family. And I love that. You talk about a resilient employee most likely to hire in, one that'll probably find a lot of loyalty to you in a world of turnover as well. So Deb, maybe directed your way, you talked a lot about these industry cohorts coming together because, I think John said earlier that there's an Achilles heels to boot camps or some of these trainings is the employment on the other end, right? Because then you might just be someone who doesn't look like the rest of the room, who's a little bit older, who doesn't have the experience that one would if they did a traditional education route. So how, maybe the rest of the panel as well, as employers in this room, how do we get involved in some of these government or state-funded activities to be able to drive programs like Stella talked about at Corewell? That's beautiful, right? And that's solving our own problem with our own people here in this area. So maybe a few tips or tricks, and if anyone else on the board, of course, has any ideas, I'd love to hear them as well. But how do we get involved? How do we jump into this?
Sure. Well, you've got two sitting, with the right place, the technology Council and West Michigan Tech Talent.
Yeah.
If, certainly those are two good collaboratives that could, where you can bring these things to issue. All right, it's not to say that if there are things that they're not covering, then that you can't build another one. But sometimes when that happens, things start to splinter and you're not taking advantage of resources holistically. So I would really recommend is to talk to John, talk to Jen Wangler, she's around here somewhere, and see how you can get involved locally with your employer-led collaboratives. And if they're not doing what you need done at the moment, voice it. I think they're very open to change and to hearing what needs to be done and to hearing, you know, some of the issues that you're facing as a recruiter. So that, I think, you know, that would be my advice to you in working. And of course, they are aware, both the Right Place and West Michigan Works, or the West Michigan Tech Talent, are very aware of the funding that's coming down through the state. And it's not just, you know, I talked about the Sector Strategies Employer-Led Collaborative, $4.7 million that just was released that you could take advantage of. Get together and put in an application for it, right? I've talked about apprenticeship. I've talked about Going Pro Talent Fund. That could be done as an individual employer by yourself if you want to put an application in, and Cycle 2 is coming. But I still say it's scale. Yep, do your individual things, right? But it's a measure of, if you can work with others to bring things to scale, then you much better leverage your educational system and what they can do. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, well, that's all the time we have for this group. Thank you very much.